Hey everyone, welcome to a new style of devlogs for Trinity 64. If for some reason you're new, Trinity 64 is a Souls-like monster tamer inspired by Ocarina of Time. And the reason why I wanted to do, if you haven't watched my last video, I kind of want to start doing just simple weekly devlogs where I kind of just check in weekly and let you guys know basically what I've been doing each week. Because of that, these videos are not going to be very edited, hardly at all. It's just going to be very casual about me just kind of talking about what I've done. And it'll allow me to show you a lot more behind the scenes with the game. And so hopefully people that are, maybe curious about a lot more of that type of stuff will get something out of it. It was something that I was doing on Patreon, and I personally just really like doing devlogs in that style because they feel a lot more just real and also allows me to get more thoughts out there. Because of that, though, these videos will probably not have that same type of reach that like a more put together devlog would have, but I'm completely okay with that because to me it's more about just documenting like my process and stuff while working on this game. So a big thing that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be kind of going over the scope of the game and stuff, because that's something I want to make sure I clear up for people who have maybe been following and are kind of unsure about certain things about the game, or maybe how things will be put together. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I've kind of done this week. So for starters, I guess we'll talk about kind of what is my ultimate goal for this game. So we'll talk about kind of like my idea for it. So a lot of people will think that some of the things I'm going to be adding to this game are going to be a lot crazier than I think I actually plan on doing. Usually when people see that this game is inspired by Zelda, they're assuming there's going to be like a lot of puzzles, or there's just going to be a lot of these different mechanics. And honestly, I don't really plan on adding a lot, like, I guess as much as the stuff that's in Zelda as people might think. There's not really going to be puzzles in the Zelda sense. There might be some small things, or kind of more like riddles and stuff for for you to solve. But the main purpose of this game is to kind of go through the world, this fantasy world, and collect creatures that you can then use to fight alongside you and to kind of push through the world and through its challenges just using the creatures. And these creatures are kind of slightly customizable, but not really. They all have defined move sets and everything like that. And it's a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about, especially over the past year, and some of it I've implemented. So I guess the best way I could really describe the game is if I was to show this. So right here, the big inspiration for the game is a game like Elden Ring, specifically summoning in Elden Ring, because that was always a big inspiration, because one of my favorite parts about Elden Ring was how you can find these summonable creatures, which are the enemies of the world, but now you can kind of summon them in situations where they fight with you, and they do exactly what they do as an enemy, but, you're in these situations where you're fighting alongside them. And it's something that I've always liked, but unfortunately it always felt like there was like some missing potential there, where unfortunately for the game, the best summon is a copy of yourself, and that kind of ruins a lot of the potential that these creatures and enemies could have. But ultimately, I just really like that concept of the enemies that you fight can fight alongside you, and they're almost like kind of collectible, but not quite. And then another game that this game is heavily inspired by is Echoes of Wisdom. Another game where you kind of do even more of what I planned for my game to do, except a lot less of a scale in certain ways. In Echoes of Wisdom, the creatures that you kind of collect are heavily used in puzzles and different sorts of mechanics throughout the world, and that's honestly one of my favorite parts. It's just super cool. The part that's disappointing about it, ultimately, though, is you can use them in combat, but the way they're kind of used is you just summon them, and if they die, you can just summon them again as long as you have the resource to do so. And what ends up happening is that you're just kind of spamming the creatures as soon as they die and stuff like that. And sometimes even just spamming them and then resummon them again kind of kills a lot of the potential that this has. And so a big goal for like my game is when you summon them, they retain their health. So like, you can't just push a reset button. You kind of have to fight with them and protect them, or if you pull them back, you will temporarily save them, but they'll still be at their health. So that's a big part of kind of my goal for the game. And if you're unaware, why am I adding creatures to this game? Like, what's the big point of adding the creatures? Well, a big part of kind of the things that I like is that, as you see right here with my website, I am like really into making fake Pokemon. If you haven't followed me before, I do a lot of like fake Zelda inspired Pokemon. So creature design and stuff like that is just kind of my bread and butter. Like I really love it. And a big inspiration for the game was this fan project. But I wanted to kind of do it in my own way, because this project is in a lot of ways overscoped as far as like the ideas. Like you can see that, if I click on this Skulltula spider creature, I created all of this templates and stuff like that. I gave it descriptions, and it has like a shiny, and I gave it abilities and all this stuff. And it's all just ideas and everything like that I wish could be real. But when it comes to making a game, you can't just have ideas. So, but yeah, there's a lot of different, creatures. Like if I click on the dragon one, there's all these different dragon type creatures that I created. I did the artwork for all these. So I really am into the art aspect of the game. And that's something that I want to reflect in Trinity as well. So I guess I should talk a little bit about what these creatures will kind of be ultimately. So as you know, hold on, let me open up level. So a lot of these creatures kind of function in a very similar way. He's using kind of his ability, that's his ability. He's using his attack. And one of the ways that I'm going to be reducing the scope of the game is that before they had like an ultimate attack. And while that sounds really cool, one of my ways of reducing the scope is to kind of take that away. As much as I really want something like that, it adds a whole ton of extra workload. And I think they kind of do what I want them to do with just a couple of attacks and abilities. So removing that kind of ultimate ability will significantly make it a lot easier to create more creatures. Because that's a big part of doing like a creature collector game, is that you kind of need to have like a certain amount to feel like they're worth kind of collecting, and it kind of increases the fun of it. And with my creatures kind of being all unique in a way with their kits, it's really important for me to make sure that I'm not creating too much of a workload. I will alter the elemental sprites kits though to reflect them not having an ultimate anymore, so they will be adjusted to like accommodate for that. But yeah, so that's a big thing with a big change that I'm making to help reduce the scope. Another thing is the game size. So like this game is going to have dungeons in it, but some people, whenever they think it's like Ocarina of Time inspired, that I'm going to have the same amount of dungeons as Ocarina of Time. And while I would want that to be the case, I just don't think that that's achievable with like how much time I'm able to put into the game. Trust me, I would want, and I have like ideas for the game to be bigger, but like I said, it's not about ideas, it's about like how I execute it. So for the game size, you can probably expect my goals for the game to be like half of Ocarina of Time. So kind of like the child dungeon section plus one more dungeon. So my goal for the game is for there to be 4 dungeons, so 3 primary ones and then a final one. For the Guardians, I kind of talked about their abilities. I'm taking away the ultimate and kind of shrinking down the workload for creating them. So also variants. I talked about it before, but I wanted there to be these variants. So as you can see right here, here's the variants for the Blossom Sprite. And this is a big thing that I wanted to do because it kind of fits with the themes of the game that I'm going for. But essentially these are kind of like shiny versions, if you're familiar with Pokemon, where there's just different kind of versions of the creature. But in Pokemon, it's really simple. It's just the shinies are just a color swap and they're just rare. But for me, I always felt like that was boring and kind of missing some potential, especially for Pokemon. I feel like there's so much Pokemon could do. And while it's not really smart to try to do something more than like a AAA company, I think I can at least do something a little bit more. Um, and so a big, goal for me originally was to create, even more forms to catch and then give them each a little passive when they're in your party. That's like the current goal. But one of the ways I'm reducing the scope of this is I really want to keep the amount because that's just really important to me. But originally I was going to like remodel each, like for each form, but that's just too much if I'm considering all of the creatures and all of them having those forms. So despite that, I'm probably not going to be remodeling them, but just doing new textures and stuff to match these designs. But luckily for me, whenever it comes to, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the one artwork, I'll show you. So right here, you can see a pretty big striking difference between the official art of the Lizalfos from Ocarina of Time versus the actual model we got. And in a lot of ways, there's some charm to this, where the 2D art is able to kind of convey things that the 3D art wasn't able to. And while that was a limitation of the time, it's still a like aesthetic of that. And I kind of want to replicate that a little bit with my own creatures, like the 2D art versus the 3D art. So for these, even though they have extra details and stuff like that, I'm probably going to keep it very simple by just changing the model. But whenever you look in the codex, you'll be able to see these 2D arts in the codex, so you can see like, oh, what it's intended to look like. So yeah, as you can see, we got the base one, and then we have the stagnant, which is supposed to represent like the kind of the, I don't know how to explain it, like the concept of this creature, but in its most stagnant, decayed kind of form. Prismatic is meant for people that just, well, it serves two purposes. One, prismatic things are a part of like the lore, but I don't want to talk about that too much right now. But this also is for people that just like shiny stuff. And then pure is kind of the creature in its most pure form. And then if we go to the water sprite, the flooded sprite, you can see that the static one is this, it's called muddled blood. So it's kind of like this blood and mud stuff going on. And then the pure form, and then the prismatic form. So you can kind of see like there's kind of like tied thematically. It's not just random colors, that kind of fits with the creature. And then for the ignited sprite, the stagnant form, it's kind of like smoky and burnt out. The pure form is this like draconic design, and then the prismatic, just like all the prismatics, is basically just shiny. Another thing is when it comes to the stats, because like I said before, in previous devlogs, you'll be able to level up these creatures with the tiers that you collect, which are like the souls or runes from a souls game. And so what can you level up? Because like in Pokemon, they just have experience points and then they level up. But these creatures, you will kind of pick which ones you want to level up with the tiers. And so there will be just 3 stats. There will be mind, body, and soul. So leveling up mind will increase the essence generation per attack plus the damage of their ability, or just the effectiveness of the ability. Leveling up body will increase how fast they can attack and the damage of their basic attack. And then soul will increase their health and how fast they are. So I'm keeping it pretty simple now, and that's like a big goal too, is just with scope, is to not create too many things, because as I'll explain probably next week, you'll see how the stats can really overcomplicate things. Like they can be pretty complicated in things like Pokemon. There's a lot of like damage calculation stuff, and I want to try to avoid that because I think the simplicity is fun with itself. So as you can see, if you haven't seen these are some early concepts of some more Guardians. So as you can see, they're not going to be just like little blobs. I know some people were wondering, oh, are you just going to have these little blob creatures? And that's definitely not true. The main reason why I started with those guys is because they're just really simple, and because I never really animated other creatures before, I wanted to try and start off really simple. But as you can see, these are kind of a lot different in different ways. I'm going to be making them a little bit more abstract. Like this one's clearly like a bear, and its whole idea is it's going to be using these little cub rock things with it. It's like mossy and viney, stuff like that. You'll notice a trend that because the region and the game is going to be split into colors mostly, you'll see that there's a reason why all these guys are similar colors. They're all kind of green. This is like some deer thing that I've been designing, and it also, I'm going to make it even more abstract. And then this is a ghost one that probably not a lot of people have seen, but you can see I'm doing different ideas of the creature. So this one's more like a virus. It's supposed to be kind of like this ghostly guardian that emerges from a body, and you can see that it's kind of using the skull and the spine, but it doesn't know like that this is a human body or anything like that. As you can see in this kind of version, it's like the skull is on the head or on the arm. This one's more of like an amalgamation and like a jellyfish kind of thing, where the eye is like not where the eye is, because that's, this is like its little eye. And then this is also a different form. So just playing around with some ideas. I've worked on them a little bit more, but I don't want to show them just yet. As you can see here, this is kind of like this isn't UI necessarily, but this is just the first kind of idea of what I might want the UI to look like. I want it to be pretty simple, but also kind of reminiscent of Ocarina of Time's menu. You can kind of see it has the spot. It has the number of the creature here. It has the creature. If you haven't collected like the prismatic form, the pure form, or the stagnant form, they won't show up. But if you have, they will be here. And then you can click on them. You can see the artwork and you can see the model. This will have the name, the nickname or the common name, and then this will be its true name. You'll see what rank it is right here, and then you'll see if it's melee or ranged, and you'll see kind of what it's good at. So this one is good at, this is like the utility icon, this is the like durability, and this is the offense. So you can see that it leans more towards utility and tankiness. And then you can click on the abilities as the ability icons, and you'll be able to see, it'll tell you what they do. You'll be able to toggle like the 2D art and the 3D art. So keeping it pretty simple as far as like a codex is concerned. And then if I play the game, I started working on it a little bit, but as you can see, I have the model just there idle, and you can kind of see like it's not really anything right now, but I'm working on getting all the data structures and stuff for each creature set up. As you can see, I can even move around while I'm doing it, which it's not going to be the case, but it's still very early, so I figured I would show that off. So hopefully by the end of next week, or hopefully, in a week, I will have that fleshed out, or at least all the information. And my goal is not to necessarily, make it look like this at this point. This is just an idea. This is essentially like just doing concept art of what I want it to look like. But, people can leave their feedback if they want it, if they're expecting something different or whatever. But I at least want to make sure that I get the information that I want in the game, because that's a big part of it. Is another big reason why I'm doing these devlogs is so that I can focus on, doing the code of things rather than making it look pretty for a video. So, but that's about it so far. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, just let me know, and I hope I will see you guys next week.